Welcome to the Disability Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team Disability. Welcome, everybody. This is the race Ramble for the 2024 USARA National Championships. I'm here with our teammates, Andrea Anderson and Dave Grabner, as well as AR DotWatch, famous Doug Silk, who, if you watched the national championships, you got to listen to him talk for like 30 hours nonstop. It was amazing. So thank you
I
for
don't know if
joining us,
that's a
Doug.
selling point right now, Chip, because I think people might be tired of listening to me ramble on about adventure racing.
Not
Never.
the purists. So this was a pretty crazy race.
It was ridiculous. I was very glad that I was sitting under a nice covered overhang at the restaurant there that I was, watching from because it started out rough and just kept getting rougher as it went on. So, you guys, I mean, obviously, we talked a little bit when you were putting your maps together. Um, what were your thought processes going into this? Because I know some teams thought it might be clearable without the paddle. Once you found out that the paddle was not there, like how did those things kind of play out?
I guess I'll start and then let them chime in. Andrew and I have worked with Michelle many times on races and doing stuff, so we know her really well. We've hung out a lot, and after hearing her race brief, I could tell by her body language, like this is going to be a really hard race. This is going to be tough. You can just tell, like, it's going to be great, guys. It's not that bad. I can pick up on her body language. She's like, I'm about to send people into war. This is like Mogadishu. This is not going to be good. And I could tell she was nervous. And so, like, especially as the weather started getting worse, and we were like, okay, we got this hurricane. It's gonna be high winds. It's gonna be raining the whole time. It's chilly. Safety is your biggest concern. There's no cell service. It's just all this like Armageddon is about to happen, and I think everybody, all the volunteers, everybody was nervous sending us out there. So either way, that was kind of going through my head as we're looking at the maps. But we did what we normally do, and we say, look, we're going to try to clear it until we're going to try our best to identify when we fall behind schedule, and then we start throwing ballast off. Identify the full points, and start kicking them out. But for us, I don't know if we've ever had the discipline to like jettison points early in a race.
Well, also, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we had limited information before this race. Like a lot of times we'll have at least the distances for each of the legs. And, we did know the order of the legs, but we didn't know any more than that. We didn't know distances. We didn't know elevation amounts per discipline. We didn't know there were going to be windows. So that window concept, she's done that in some of her other races. So that wasn't completely foreign to us. But for those window points, there were clusters of 3 points, and there was one of those on every leg of the race. And if you got all three of those points, you got those extra points. So it just added a lot of strategy. And what I was getting at is we usually have a little bit more to go on ahead of time because we make a spreadsheet that kind of estimates how long we think each leg will take and that sort of thing. But so since we didn't have any distances, we didn't have a logistics chart. We didn't, time any of that out ahead of time. The only thing we did do is say to ourselves, we know there's going to be 50 points and we know there's 30 hours. So if we're not getting a point every 35 minutes, we're probably falling behind. Just assuming that the points might be equidistant away, which is, it's not always the case, but it was something. It was better than nothing to go on. So, but then, was it maybe half an hour before the race started? It wasn't much longer than that when they said that the paddle was canceled. And then we started calculating, well, how many hours does that buy us back? Oh, and then when we got the rule book said a fast and slow time estimate for each of the legs. And so we started doing that math. So the fast estimates added up to 28 and a half hours, minus transitions. And we're like, ooh, we really got to measure how we're doing against those fast times. And then the slow times added up to 40 and a half hours, which is, 10 and a half hours past the time, the cutoff of the whole race. So yeah, so we were trying to judge by that, and then checkpoints, minutes per checkpoint. And so when they cut the paddle, like, oh, we bought back these many hours, and we were pretty hopeful, especially as the race started, that we were ahead of ourselves in the minutes per checkpoint and in the fast time for the leg. So
Yeah, I think Michelle likes to keep everything a secret until you're absolutely like on scene or like at where you get the maps because I think she just likes making you really anticipate and not fully know and be able to prepare for it, but just be able to go out and execute. And that definitely was something that a lot of teams were, I don't think we're fully prepared for. Like you guys are super experienced, and so you've had experience kind of putting those things together last minute and getting the maps and being able to run through them and figure out. And the important thing, I think one of the important things to note here is that you need to know what your paces are, right? Like because the fact that you guys know that makes that easier. But there's some teams out there that are not as great planners as you guys are, and so they don't know that. And so they don't know like, okay, well, we're going to average 2 miles an hour on foot and we're going to average, 8 miles an hour on the bike. So how does that play out? So if you don't know those things ahead of time, um, David, I mean, this is the first like time that I think you're looking, I mean, knowing 100% that you guys are going to be like in a super competitive race with all kinds of competitive teams with disability. Oh no, I think we lost him.
Yeah, it looked like he was frozen.
I
Maybe he's
know.
back now.
Oh,
There he
I think
goes.
it's because of that mean face he's got behind him. It keeps dropping him.
I don't know why my Wi-Fi keeps dropping. No idea. It's-
No, I don't know if you heard the question, but I basically I said this is the first ultra competitive race that you have been in with this ability where like you're going up against the top competition and knowing that you are one of those people, how did it feel like getting the maps and being able like to put the race plan together in 3 hours?
I mean, so I really liked the detail of everything. All the information was there. Like they had a rule book, a guidebook, and it laid out everything really well and in great detail. So there was nothing left to like, oh, I don't really know about this. It was pretty much all there, which was amazing. But that took time to make sure you went over the rule book carefully. And but the cool thing about the team was both of us, like I could do the rule book while Chip was doing the routes. And so like we were able to divvy that up. So I felt like we had enough time to do the route. Um, and I felt good going into it that like, okay, we have a good plan of what we're gonna do, but then we're gonna see what happens because you can have a good plan and then like the first leg takes you 10 hours and you're like, oh, okay, that went out the window. Now we got to readjust. So we always knew there's gonna be a readjustment point at some place in the race. We'll have to make some decisions.
But Chip, you were saying that your plan was to go until you couldn't clear, right? Is that
Yeah,
where you
especially
guys
after we
set
found
out?
out they cut the paddle, because the assumption was we're probably not going to clear. We need to start cutting points. When they cut the paddle, it was like, there's a chance we could do this. Let's play it by ear. Let's not cut anything too early and let's just pay close attention to our progress. And then the minute we start falling behind, then let's start jettisoning points. And that's what we did. We made some errors where I think we could have cut maybe earlier stuff, but I'm generally 95%. I was pretty happy with how we handled it.
And
How
we took
much?
a long while to decide if we were going to do that first window or not. I think we had the most conversation about that one because Michelle highly suggested skipping that if you thought you weren't going to clear the course, pretty much. And it did look challenging, but it was early on in the race, and you can't get those points back if you realize later that you should have gone for them. And you're the freshest. It was supposedly the most challenging navigation of the course, which it may or may not have been. It was challenging for sure, but We
It
were
was for a
freshmen.
lot of teams.
A
It
lot of
was,
teams, I watched the trackers. A lot of them went way past and hit the road and like
yeah, it
top
was
teams too.
crazy. It was crazy to watch the scrambling between, especially between A and B.
Yeah.
It was, if you didn't hit that one perfectly, you had a rough time. And I mean, there were some teams that ended up going really high above the B point. But so just for everybody at home that was not tracking, shame on you, first of all. Um, second of all, the race consisted of a prologue, then a first trekking section with the first window, and that window bonus was worth 6 points. And then it moved into the really long bike section that ended up having two windows in it, I believe. No, sorry, just one window. And that was and then moved into uh, no, it did have two. It had a bike. Oh no, that wasn't a window. That was just a single track. Sorry. So it had that trekking window, and then went into a really long and very difficult trek leg that also that finished up with a short bike with a window, and then there was going to be a paddle section, but that got completely canceled, and you just went right to the TA where there was a window that would have been on the paddle. Then you finished with a really hard uphill bike section with a probably the most elevation gain in a window at the end. So let's start out with the prologue because, well, hold on. First, let's start out when you guys were all sequestered into the room where it's warm and comfortable, and you're getting all the maps together, and then you walked out the back door of the hotel to walk towards the start and got hit in the face with 30-mile-an-hour winds and rain. What was going through your head at that point?
You know what's funny? I was just concerned about being cold at the start. And I was like, as soon as we get going, we know what this is. We're used to racing wet, like whatever it is. As long as we keep moving, we'll be fine. So like it really didn't bother me at all, except that, okay, I'm gonna have to stand out here in the cold before we start the race. That was the only thing that bothered me.
And don't
Uh,
forget, and some anybody that listens to our podcast probably knows we just got back. I mean, the three of us plus Caitlin just got back from 5 days in Alaska fighting this exact same situation. It was spitting rain and cold and wet. It would maybe wouldn't hurricane force winds, but it was basically the same kit I was wearing was the same kit I had in Alaska. And we had already trained in that. We've been there,
right.
and we know that although it sucks, it's not that bad. It wasn't below 40. You know what I'm saying? When it's 50s and cold and wet, I mean, as long as you're moving, you're fine. You know, you need some kit in case anybody gets hurt. You got to like take off your wet shirt, put on some dry thermal and all that stuff. But
Well, if anything, it stops the amount of rest that you take, right? Because you don't want to stand still for too long or you'll start shivering.
yeah, within 3 minutes,
So
start getting cold. Yeah.
yeah, you do get cold fast. But that said, um, just before the start, the guys take off their rain jackets. And of course, I can't imagine being hot. So I leave my rain jacket on, which that lesson I just can't seem to learn because I know I'm going to be hot in an instant, but I was so cold just standing there, I couldn't force myself to take it off. So we're running around the prologue points fast. I'm trying to stay with David, and he's like bounding. And there's some bushwhacking in that too. We're going down this like well, it's just kind of a median, but it's between parking lots and it's really steep. And he's like slipping and sliding and landed. I don't know how many times he fell just on the prologue. I was like, oh no, we can't get hurt on the prologue. But anyway, I had to take my jacket off like while we were running because I had to keep up. I couldn't stop to take the thing off, and I was totally overheating. And the prologue only took 15 minutes, and here I am like going from freezing to thinking my teammate hurt himself already and putting my jacket on. Of course he didn't. But and he's a hard one to keep up with when he's on fire and when he's bounding over roots and rocks and stuff. That was fun.
Well, so that prologue had 9 points and you had to choose five. There was some dot watching going on, and people were like, I don't know how I would go. We talked to Michelle. Which way, what did you guys decide to do for the prologue?
It's a little bit hard to explain, but we decided to go clockwise, basically the point that was closest to the start to the left, and kind of make a loop back around to the start.
So you
which was
left
backwards
and
in the
then
numbers.
south. No, wait.
Yeah, going, yeah. When
You
you
went
when
continued clockwise around?
Yeah, we went west and then we kind of went around north and then back south back to the start. But the numbers went the opposite direction. So
yeah.
I think what our basic strategy was, we don't want to be with the crowd because if they're slow and you're kind of running in and out of them, it's pain in the ass. So we're like, let's pick a route, but let's go where there would be the least amount of people. And that I think we did pretty good with that. Although a couple of, of course, 5 or 10 other teams were with us, but we didn't get gummed up with people.
Right. We didn't have to wait to punch.
There was definitely a clear advantage, and I couldn't really tell how people went right off the gun, right? Like, and how it played out because I mean, you guys were within the top 10 going out on leg one. I remember seeing you come in and hollering at you. I don't know if you could hear anything from the wind and rain and
Right.
scrambling. Um, it's funny because I'm covering the whole race. And I think at one point somebody asked me who my favorites were, and I was like, well, I can't really say that. I have to be a journalist. But deep down in my soul, I was always rooting for you guys. And looking kind of to see where you were. Um, so you head down the mountain for the first trek, right? And I'm going to pull up the tracker so that we can take a look at it and we can kind of talk through it. So the start was up here at the resort, and it doesn't have the checkpoints for the prologue, but you guys went um west and then
Yeah.
came around up to get the points and come back, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And then so this I have your track up now. It seemed kind of like a conga line heading down the mountain. Was there any route options in that section that were interesting?
Well, so checkpoint one, it looks like we just nailed it, but we didn't. We got lost. A lot of teams actually. It was a little bit tricky with all the mountain bike trails weren't really quite what they looked on our map, or I didn't follow it correctly when we were running in there. It's running so hot. But we got it pretty quickly at the same time as a lot of the other top teams. And then we ran
So
down.
Doug, let me do a screen share real quick, and I'll show you what it really looked like. The
Okay.
real map is completely different than the map than the DotWatch map or the. All
See, and I
right,
think that's what's fun, right? Because we're at home and
yeah.
um, it's hard to figure out what you guys are seeing. Okay, so there is
So
a
look
bunch
at
of
one and
trail
two. Look at the
mumbo
spaghetti
jumbo.
trails in there. Like
Yeah.
here you are, you're with 50 racers all running around. Everybody's, it's like, whoa, like all these trails. And this is, I'm zoomed in on this. This is hard when it's raining. You got your map in a map case. You're wiping the rain off of it. And you're trying to look at these little minute trails and run through there. If you strip out all the trails and you just look at the topography, it's not that big of a deal. It's like one's at the end of the high point, and the other one's on the next high point. No big deal. If you took the trails off, it would have been easy. But we're trying to follow the trails and know which way to turn and all of that. Oh, it's a complete mess. Uh,
And then so 2 to 3 was that just did you take the trail around?
no, I think we bushwhacked down to that, didn't we?
Which way now? Okay.
Pretty sure, yeah. No, we didn't take the trail down. I'm pretty sure we came down and we bushwhacked straight down to that.
Which, hey, full on race mode, right? You're you're
Oh,
busting through the
oh,
woods.
okay. If you look real quick, there's a fire a power line. So we
Okay.
got to that corner, we cut to the power line, came down, and we shot down. We missed it a little bit and just had to backtrack slightly, but we used that power line as kind of a handrail to get down to it. And basically get down until you can see the road, and then we were able to pop that point. The really hard one was this one. As you're coming around below the firing range, we shot a bearing in and basically we're trying to basically find that rock pile, and then from the rock pile shoot a bearing to 4. But that was a tough one. A lot of teams went around and came back up to 4.
Yeah.
And this was tough because, like, this what does this
Not a lot of
pile going to
topography.
look like,
Yeah. Well, it doesn't look like there's a lot of topography, right? Like you're basically looking for it to start to go downhill, but once it's there, you're almost too far.
Yeah. And we as we were coming away from the rock pile, it's this big flat section, and then we started going downhill. We actually had to backtrack to it because
Yeah.
we were like, whoa, 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 we're dropping too fast. We passed it. So we came back to it. A
And I
lot of
think,
teams ran around and took this road up to do the nearest attack point.
yeah, and I think that's a big key for people at home that are thinking about racing or that are out there that are racers, is knowing like your step count, and so distance that you need to go, and then also knowing like what your backstop is. Like, okay, wait, we're starting to go downhill and we shouldn't be. Um, but then also being able to have the wherewithal to to recognize that, while you're racing hard,
Yeah.
because that can make a big difference.
It's really funny.
Uh,
You're kind of bringing up exactly the point that again, our podcast, we're usually educational, and this is a teaching moment. Yeah, we've raced with Dave a couple times now, and normally I do the biking, he does the trekking, and he's a great nav, and he does strategy and all the stuff. So it's like basically he's the complete package. But in this type of environment, we're going so fast. We realized as we look back and process after the race, I was thinking, man, we really need to get on the same page about, I call it systems and processes. It's like, how methodically, how are we going to do this every single time? And for example, like what you're talking about, like before we dive in, let's give everybody the bearing that we're on, at least a direction, southwest, northwest, whatever the number. Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a bearing because I'm using my wrist compass. He's got the one with the degrees on it. But at the end of the day, all of us needed to know what's the general direction that we're going, how far are we going, what's the topography going to do? Is it going up, down, or staying the same? Are there any guardrails? Are there any backstops? What's the clue? Like, let's not get into the woods. We're running, we're 20 meters apart going through the woods. Like, hey, what's the clue again? It's like we really need to get it where we like knock out this checklist before we dive in and we're ducking and flopping around and trying not to trip and fall and you got 5 other teams around you. And that's something like we're so good at winging it. I mean, Dave and I met each other at Solo National Championships. You're just busting through the woods because it's just you. When it comes down to it, if you really want to be surgical, you got to work as a team, and you really have to communicate all this stuff to everybody. So when you go in, everybody's got the same thing on their mind, and they know what they're doing, what they're looking for, what they're avoiding. And that's one of the things I think we could have done better. Like, let's say we were at 90%, we could get to 95. So I'm really, really proud of our nav because we made very few errors. But there's
I
always
think we
that little
work
bit you could do better.
I think we work together really well.
Yeah.
And I think what's sometimes tricky is we all know we need to do those things if it's a really challenging point. And then sometimes we just have this sense like, oh, this one's right off the trail. It won't be hard. So we get a little loose with it. And that might be the one that we shouldn't have.
Which
But where
is
we
typical
were,
of this ability, right? Like you come out of the TA and you're feeling comfortable and you're like, oh, that one's gonna be easy, and then
yeah,
you blow by it.
yeah. But where we needed to be tight, we were in that first window. That was just so fun because we knew we were at the front. And one of the reasons we knew we were at the front is we were right behind Bend Racing. So we were going up to that first point. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm right behind them. And like, we're on them. And we are going straight for the point we're trying to get to, just as planned. And we see them go past it on the left, and we see it and they don't see it. And of course, we're kind of quiet and we go get it. And it turns out, they took 45 minutes to get that point. We had no idea, but it was so thrilling to be near them and then to find out that we actually passed them. And then I guess Chip or David, you should talk about going from A to B because that was a um, that was a challenge, but we met the challenge.
Yeah, I
Well,
guess
and
I
I,
Yeah.
oh,
I want to
sorry, go
share
ahead.
my screen and just play the video while you guys are talking to kind of show what everyone did in that section,
Oh
because
yeah, if you
it
can do that, that'd be
it
great.
was It was crazy at watching it, right? Like your tracker didn't show you getting um 6 or A, but I knew you weren't skipping at that point. So I wasn't concerned about, especially when you went up to B. But go ahead, David, and talk um through that section while I
Yeah, well, first I wanted to reiterate what Chip said about we need to have like a set thing. I came up with an acronym CBD, like easy to remember, clue, bearing, and distance. So like every time we get close to checkpoint, we should just be giving everyone the CBD, like clue, bearing, distance. And like we should just that's what we should always do. Because in a lot of races, navigation is pretty easy compared to this race, and we don't really need it. But this race, navigation was really hard and we did need it. Um, Now, in this window,
So
trying to
just
get
so you guys know, so that you're 129. Um, so it skipped these, but it shows that you were right up here, at the highest point at one point. But yeah, I mean some of the top teams d didn't fare so well up in this section.
so Chip had a really good strategy for this point. His was to go to the top of the reentrant and then from the reentrant shoot a bearing to the point. Um, and so we basically did it. And Wadali, I guess, had kind of the same plan because we were kind of right behind them as we were going. And honestly, when we started off, I got the point and they're like, let's go. And I was going so quick and I didn't have time we didn't even really do the bearing. But like as we were going, like, okay, we got to go find this reentrant. And once we found the reentrant, we shot the bearing, then I found the road and boom. I think we might be the first team to get that checkpoint B.
Because we were in
Like,
front of Wadali that way, because
yeah,
they actually said they were going for the point. We were up there right with them, and I said, "Are you guys going
yeah.
for the same reentrant we are?" Because basically it's a plateau, and on the south side of the plateau is a drop off, right? Because it's a plateau, and then it drops. We're following the drop off until the plateau makes a little curve and it causes a reentrant. I knew once we got to the reentrant, we just had to go 150 meters north. We'd pop the point, no problem. And so we're cruising along with Dolly's right there and all that. And I said, "You guys must be looking for the same reentrant we are." And they're like, "No, we're looking for the point." And I kind of was like, "You're way off." It's like, it's kind of fun. But either way, we get to the reentrant. They're looking at the map going, "What the?" And then Dave and I were just like, "Let's get the reentrant, glow up. Okay, this looks right, 150. Boom. Like we're at that hit point." And so
Well,
I was
and
the
look at
first
look
ones
at
there.
this
We were getting
separation.
up in the front.
Yeah, look at this separation right now. This is Bend over here in the black. Who they had been up here looking for this for a while. All the way over here on the left-hand side of the screen is you guys
Oh,
and
wow.
Wadali.
And with
Uh,
Dolly right
That
there, side
may
by side.
never happen again, by the way,
Yeah, it
but
won't. No,
it was really cool.
this is us getting lucky.
well, and listen,
We
sometimes you
have
got to
that
be
skill
lucky
too.
and good, right? You got to
Yeah.
be a little bit of both. And it's funny because if you and I'm going to try to back it up just a little bit just to show you. I mean, I should there are some major teams in this area that completely overshot it. I think this is probably the best place to go here. So this is when everybody comes in, and you'll see the teams that if they went right here of the point, they did not make it back over to the point very easily. Like Bend was right up there. There's Wadali. But look at you guys. You blew through that. There's Bend. Look at them. They're like,
Ooh.
I don't know where we're at. I mean, there were other teams that went way up here. That's no complaints. That were just like, okay, I don't know what we're gonna do here.
Well, there
So,
wasn't a great backstop, and I think we need to add a couple things to our acronym. We need to add the backstop and we need to add the terrain because, whether we're going up or down or, how we should be moving along if it's a spur or reentrant, whatever. Those two things, if we can add that to the CBD
And
somehow.
altitude.
We got to think through that. But we can't
Altitude.
think too
Yeah.
much. We're trying to be in a hurry. It has to be second nature, Like
Right.
Yep.
for a Chip, a lot of those things really are second nature. When I find myself racing, solo racing, I have to think really hard about what I'm supposed to be paying attention to. But anyway,
And I think for
yeah,
newer racers, and I think we may have talked about this before, but think of it like an airline pilot. you got your normal person can just fly a Cessna, right? You got your little stick and you got your airspeed and your altitude, and it's pretty simple. And then you get into like an airline and you got 10,000 switches on all the different systems and redundancies. And you really need that 10,000 hours looking at it to know what every switch does and be able to look at the entire dashboard and see what's going on. And I think as people progress through their navigation, like maybe you just go to an orienteering course and the maps are perfect and it's basically flat. And then you get into this complicated nav and you start pulling out the altimeter, pace counting, elevation changes, just the nuances. Just the more and more and more you stare at maps, the more it becomes natural to look at all of the different instruments on your panel and all the different tools. It just takes a lot of time. That's really what it boils down to. It's like one is you got to know what you're doing, basically like read squiggly lines that Latanzi wrote, or like read the book, but then you still have to go out there and spend 1,000 hours with maps in your hands to start practicing those tools, and then you'll get to that point where it's second nature.
Yeah, I was actually talking to the Bridge Boys because Aaron Linville's on that team, and he is like a map savant. And he like they say that he can be walking and they'll just be like he'll be like, "Okay, do you see that right there?" And they're like, "See what?" And he's like, "That blade of grass is higher than this other one, and so that is like this topo line right here." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" But he has been like he literally creates orienteering courses, all the time. And so he knows what he's looking for and then knows how to put it into perspective on a race course, which is sometimes hard to do, especially if maps change, size and, distance in between points. And that's difficult. So
Yeah, we
you
actually
guys,
we got to bring something up because you're reminding me of a point in this race. I think it was somewhere around 22 or 23, but we were trying to find a road, but all these roads they're on the map, but they don't exist in reality. And like we cruise up, and this one team's like wandering around, like they have no idea where are we, what are we doing, and we're all looking around, and then finally I looked and I went old growth, pine. This is it. Let's go. And we started bolting through the woods, and I'm sure the team was like, "What the hell was
how do
that?
they do that?
Follow
Yeah.
them, quick, follow them." I think I even said we just made their day. But yeah, it's nuancy stuff that it just takes a lot of experience.
Yeah, so you guys were right there with Wadali, start at the start of that bike course. How was that single track to get started?
Hard.
Like all the adventure race single track now that we've been doing lately.
How
Yeah,
did
it was
how did the weather
challenging.
play into it? Because I heard reports that people were getting blown off their bikes.
I noticed the mud more than the wind. There was a section once we got up to was at the Mauer trails. Up there, it was more open and there was not as much tree cover, and you could kind of feel yourself being shifted one way or the other with the wind right up there. But for the most part, we were inside forests and the trees were, snap, crackle, popping all around. And even some of them were, rubbing against each other, making that really cool sound. And the mud, it was just everything was wet. And, it was real rocky, lots of drops, lots of steep drops. And then, of course, when it's raining, they'll have a puddle like at the bottom of the drop. And then it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And you're not really sure, you can't see the bottom. So you kind of got to drop and pull up at the same time. And you're not sure if you're going to be able to pull up far enough, to not go over the front of your handlebars. And for the most part, I think the guys were successful. I fell a couple of times, and a couple of times I kind of ran off my bike. Like when the bike, you drop the bike and you're going down, so you kind of hop over the front of the bike and kind of run it out. It
Yeah.
kind of feels like parkour, like, woo. But I thought that was really fun, and they were beautiful trails, and you don't always get a chance to use the skills you've worked on for a long, long time. Like took me a long time to learn how to confidently ride. And I was really happy that it didn't shake my confidence. Every time I had a fall, like maybe it took a little bit for a second, but in the past, when I was learning how to ride harder and harder stuff, I would fall and it would set me back quite a bit to where it would take away from my ability for the next week or hours, or but it didn't shake my confidence this time. So I was happy about that. And like I said, I don't think the guys had any problems, but
Well,
I
and
had much fewer problems than I ever would have before.
that's the experience talking. The trails were extremely difficult. Like even if it was dry, this is not your normal single track that's groomed and all of that. I mean, there's many routes at different angles, which especially when it's wet. I mean, it's the easiest thing. It'll just throw the bike out from under you and you're hitting the ground. Tons of rocks, tons of things that are separated about the same distance of your tires. So I mean, you're just constantly going through this thing and having to make micro adjustments. And it like let's just say this: if you're a road runner and then you try to go on trails, like you're going to roll your ankle, you're going to trip and fall because your brain's not used to processing lots of rugged terrain. If you trail run every single day, it's like your brain gets to processing 8 or 9, 10 feet in front of you. You kind of memorize. I think your subconscious memorizes the terrain so that your body just kind of does what it needs to do to get through it. And biking is exactly the same way. You know, if you're just on a treadmill at Planet Fitness and then you try to go ride these trails that we just rode, you're dead. I mean, you're going to walk your bike or you're going to get wrecked.
Right.
It really takes that, Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours of not only riding a bike in tough terrain, but riding it with a 20-pound pack, right? Because we're loaded down with 30 hours of crap. We don't have a gear bent. All of our food's on our back. And you're going through this terrain and it's steep and it's wet and it's slick. And luckily, all of us have biked a lot. And so we can go through that type of terrain extremely quickly and confidently without. And if you fall, we've fallen so many times. You just run off your bike and no big deal. But I felt bad. A lot of the newer teams that aren't used to that terrain, I would imagine their life was miserable for that, 12 hours because you're walking your bike down the hill and up the hill. And like, this isn't fun. This sucks.
Yeah. I mean, and we also, like I said, we had training in Alaska. The trails in Alaska were very similar.
Very
So,
similar. Yeah.
Well, you talk about walking your bike. The Steel Wolves, I don't know if you heard their story, but Megan Natano ended up, her bike hub ended up coming out about a quarter of the way through that major bike leg. And they were like, well, we're going to keep going. And so they walked their bike pretty much all of that bike leg. Because, I don't think the hills were big enough to really ride down a lot. Um,
mhm.
and so they walked the whole way and then ended up borrowing a bike from Broad Run Off-Road, who was abandoning due to an injury. And David Dolling gave them a bike and allowed them to finish. Now, this is also after one of their bikes was damaged in TA1 from that big tree that fell. So they had to get a borrowed bike from the resort. And then the third bike on their team, their brakes failed. So they had no rear brake and only like a quarter of their front brake. And David Dolling was actually able to fix that in the transition when he gave him the other bike. So like,
Wow.
you want to talk about just like putting your head down and saying, I am not quitting today. And they did. And even when it looked like their race was going to be over when they got into the TA, which they didn't miss the cutoff by much, they were given a gift and got a bike and were able to continue. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well,
so
sometimes it is luck. We didn't have any mechanicals. My gears were acting up towards the end of the race, but on those trails, if you don't have a bike you're comfortable on and that's working properly, that'd be
I mean,
awful.
two of the, some of the top 10 competitive teams in Ben 4 Hour Fuel, and FLX,
Like, yeah.
Flex.
ended up having bike mechanicals and having to pull out of the race during that bike stage. So, I mean, it just shows you do have to get a little bit lucky as well. I want to pull up the tracker again because you were talking about the single track section there at Morrow. And I want to point out, like, you guys didn't get there super far after Wadali. And at this point, I'm really excited as a dot watcher because I'm watching you guys go second and third place with the Rootstock women. And because these other teams that are up here, which are Rootstock and Royal Elks, they chose to give up points early on in hopes that they would be able to get some windows, I think, later on. So they strategically gave up some of those points. But at this point, you guys caught back up to them here, 7.5 hours into the race.
Yep.
So even though I mean, Rootstock skipped 8, 9, and 10. They skipped that whole single track section around the loop and went straight to the road and came up. And Royal Elk skipped number 6 and that first window, I believe. So strategy was in play here, but you guys were moving, and I'm watching you guys go back and forth here. Like this is what I'm seeing on the tracker, right? Like you and the Rootstock women going neck and neck, and then like this is what I'm watching.
Yeah, we were side by
Uh,
side there riding with them for what felt like 10 or 15 minutes.
which is
Yeah.
pretty listen, I think that speaks a lot to you guys because I mean that was a very strong women, especially biking team.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
I
are.
mean, Britt just raced these trails as a member of Team USA the week before.
Oh,
So yeah. So
they were really, really impressive, but they were impressive on foot too. Like the first time we leapfrogged with them was in the first trek. And I was like, I don't know why we're passing them because they're just going to pass us again. Like that's what was kind of crossing through my head. And sure enough, like that kept playing out. It's like, oh, here we go again. We have to pass them because they're stopping for a second or whatever. But in the back of my head, I was like, oh, I know we're going to see them
here they
soon.
come again. Did
Yeah,
you
they
guys
were really,
have
really
an
good.
did you guys have any understanding of like where you stood and in the race? And we'll talk about that like as the race goes on, but especially here on this first bike leg. Did you have
So the first time on the bike leg that I realized, wait a minute, we're ahead of them was when we were coming out of that. There was like that little foot section in the bike race. In the bike section, there was like the little window. It was a window.
Yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and and as we were biking down, we saw Rib Mountain Racing coming in. And I was like, wait a minute, we're ahead of them?
Right.
And I was like, oh wow, okay, we're doing something. And then the second time was when we got into TA2, and I see that Rev 3 Pro team, the Jessies, coming behind us. I was like, we beat them here? And then I was like, wow, we are doing something. Like we are up there.
And at that
Yeah.
point, we knew we were clearing and we figured that they were clearing. Because
Right.
any other team, you kind of assume they're probably cutting points, but the Jessies and Amanda aren't going to cut
they're
points.
not, yeah, they're not giving
Yeah.
up
So,
points.
and we knew that the Rootstock girls were trying to clear, women of AR. So we kind of had the same strategy. And you guys still clearing? Yeah, we're clearing. And so you kind of know if I see them, that we know where we are in the standings.
So at TA2, when we saw Rev 3 Pro, and they took off a little bit before us, and I thought, oh, it's the last time we're going to see them. We know how this goes. Like they might have had a bobble, but they're gonna take off, and we won't see them again. Was in the back of my head, but we're still hustling. We didn't spend that long at that TA, and we get back, on foot was the next leg, and we see them anyway. We get to CP23 and there's a couple of teams, good teams. They were there. Who else was there? Anyway,
Royal
Royal
Elks.
Elks was there, and
Royal Elks
Ladali
were
just
there.
left. Yeah.
And Women of AR team was there at one
Yep.
point, and it was a really hard point, and we
I
attacked
saw your
several
tracker go
times.
right through it, and we'll get to that tracking because I want to show kind of what other teams did.
Yeah.
But Chip, I want you
But
to.
but I just wanted to
Sorry.
say my point in bringing that up is that's also when we were like, wow, we did see the Jessies again and we passed them,
Yeah,
like passed Rev 3 Pro at that point. And that's when we were like on a really big high, maybe too high. But anyway,
And then
go
it
ahead.
fell apart.
And what's so funny, I because we love these guys. We've been friends for like a really, really long time. And like normally, if we ever see them in like national championships, we're like mid pack number 22, and I see them go by, and I'm like, hey guys, here's what I know about the course. This is like the first time I had to walk by Jesse. I'm like, I want to tell him, but I'm not going to tell him because we're in
I
competition. It was so
can.
Well,
funny. I'm sorry, I just can't. Like my teammates will kill me if I give you any bait on this. But
but especially,
yeah,
and Jesse Spangler,
yeah,
we lives in Richmond and we live near him and we're often at the same orienteering meets. And Chip's goal is always to beat Jesse.
which I'll
And
never beat him.
it's no, I don't know if it's ever happened.
It
Probably
never
never.
happened.
It's kind of like my goal is always to beat Chip, and it's never happened.
I made a
Chip,
meme out of it. You know that the Dos Equis guy, the guy that knows everything, or and I had this Dos Equis guy sitting there says, I don't always win orienteering races, but when I do, it's because Jesse Spangler's
he's
not there.
not there.
And it's
I
like,
love it. I
yeah,
love it. Can you pull up the race maps, because this became a really pivotal point in this bike section, what I have up here on the map, where you can see the recommended route.
oh, yeah.
But most teams took this southern route
Yep.
that turned into a pretty crappy trail at the bottom.
Ah,
And it slowed down people a lot. In fact, I want you to see, this is obviously Woodalley, right? And this is Magic Bike. And I want you to see the difference in the two like ways that people went, in that they were behind Wadali by a pretty significant portion, but you can see they made up a lot of time by taking that
Wow.
route.
yep.
But you see a lot of teams here are taking that southern route, but the teams that didn't, they were able to bomb down that hill. I mean, look at 102. I mean, they just passed a lot of teams
Right.
coming down that hill. Can you pull up your race
Yeah,
maps for that?
it looked a little different. Let me see if I can do this
We
fast.
lost a bit of time there, I think.
Well,
Do you
it's
remember
hard
what
too,
Matt?
right? Because you're trying to cut off probably 3 or 4 thousand, 3 or 4K, maybe five.
Which map was that on, Doug?
I don't know. It was right for CP by TA2. So um I don't remember which map it was. Uh,
Wasn't that the place where we went down to the water and we were with
Yeah,
the
there it
RVA
is. I
that's
got
it
it.
thing,
right
Bill
there.
Dawson and Robin Dawson,
Yeah,
and we
yep.
thought we were on the trail right next to the water, but we had missed a little bit higher up trail.
Yeah,
So
so
we lost a little bit of time there,
this
but
may
we
have been
did
what
find
did
the
it.
right trail and it wasn't awesome.
Yeah. So
Well, and
this is what
Mike
made it.
Garrison talked about it on our live show about how teams were really going to suffer in that last, I mean, it's maybe a couple thousand, maybe 1,000 or 15K, but that it was a brutal, like not fun section.
No, it wasn't. But this road you can see, and again, I'm really zoomed in. It's harder to do this when it's raining and you're with your headlamp, right? You can see this little thing sticking down. There was the end of the road was right here. So if you missed the fact that the trail was back there a little bit, you get to the end of the road and then you find a trail. It's really just like a fisherman's trail that goes along this waterway. There's a campsite. So we actually took a little thing. We probably wasted 10 minutes following a trail that we thought was this black trail,
Hmm.
but got back there and it just got flooded out. And then we look up the topo and we see headlamps up here. We're like, crap, we got to go back. So we went all the way back, found the trail entrance, and then took it. But as it went, it wasn't actually that bad until it started turning north. Somewhere in here, it got completely washed out. Right, isn't this
Yeah,
where we had to follow the stream? That
Yeah.
there was a road that went down to it. And then
No, it's actually further on. It's when it
further
was
up.
on that other road. It
Oh,
wasn't on the
there it
black
is.
trail.
Here it is. Yep, right here. So we come up here, we
Yeah,
turn,
right there. Yeah.
come down into here. This road has been completely washed out by the river. So now we're just walking up a river until we jump onto the other side, get back on the road, and then there's logs down and you're hike biking up and over stuff. This was not a fun experience. So that's probably what slowed everybody down. But it's kind of one of those like when it comes down to strategy, when you're looking at the map, all you see is I've got a northern route that's longer and I've got a southern route that's shorter. And you look at
right.
this black trail and go, it can't be that bad. And so
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
you
only
can.
it's only
Not that bad.
15, 1,800 meters, right? Like you're like, oh, that's not
Yeah.
bad.
But you
But
see a
man,
road on
you
here.
saw that it made a big difference.
Right. And maybe this restricted should have given it away, that maybe there's this, it's been washed out. I don't know. But, if I look back at it, would I made a different choice? Probably not. I mean, it was like there's, again, adventure racers, like you make a choice. I don't care what it is. It's a barbed wire fence or a pit bull. I'm going to punch through and figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely seemed like it was slower. So good on the teams that figured that out.
Yeah. And I mean, I think at that point, teams were trying to figure out how to not be on trail anymore. So the teams that took advantage of staying on the road ended up getting an advantage, where, other teams were trying to take the shorter route, regardless of difficulty.
Yep.
So you guys get into TA2, and it's got to be dark. Is it dark at that point for you guys? Because I
Yeah.
think, okay. Um, I figured most teams when they were coming down off the ridge, they were getting into TA2. Um, we, this next trekking section was a tough one for a lot of people, because I mean Rootstock had a difficult time for CP21 that ended up really kind of ending their competitive day, in that section. Um, they ended up taking that trail to the south, or sorry, to the
Kind of the
west,
West.
close to
Yep.
the river, and Wadali took that route as well. And you can see that little. It says there's a trail. I don't know that there really was. And they just rootstock didn't get high enough, and then they ended up in no man's land. Well, like keep going high, like you can't even
Yeah,
see
it
it
was
because
like
it's
off
on the
this
map.
map and on the other. Yeah, they
Correct.
were off the
Um,
other side of the mountain, I think.
and there was a video I think of Abby saying that she's never been like that turned around in rhododendron, where like she just had no idea even where she was. Um, but you guys had good navigation in this area, right?
We followed the road up, just because there's more of a known. I think by this time we knew that these little dotted trails were not going to be there. Um, I don't know. Dave was doing most of the nav on Trek, but I remember thinking like we need to stay on the larger stuff. Like these little trails, we just assumed that they weren't there. So it probably was smarter to go around the bottom, but you would need to be able to do brute force navigation to get back up there and hit that road to find that point.
Yeah, and David, since you were running the nav in that section, um, at this point, was there, you guys came out of the TA, went up the hill, came down and got the point, and then, moved on pretty quickly. Um, 22 to 23. In fact, let me share mine again, Chip, because I want to show you guys
I'm
kind
going to
of
show the
what
spaghetti.
I want to show you what people kind of did in that section, because it was quite interesting, including Wadali. They had a tough time in that area, and then when you see your little dot come through here, you're gonna be super proud of what you guys did. So I'm gonna back it up just a hair so you can see this was Wadali, obviously out here by themselves at this point. And they start moving up the ridge, easily get that one. But here they go past it, look around for it, come back, go back, find another team, then they go in, then they clearly get it. But at this point, look, you're right there.
Yeah, we're
That's you
right there.
guys.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
you
Wow.
caught up with Wadali right there and are within, 50 meters of them probably, after they were getting the checkpoint.
We're like, it's crazy. That's 14 hours into
Yep.
basically half the race, and we're hanging with the top teams. That's why I'm
Yep.
like, I'm
Blew my
so glad of the
mind.
strategy that we did, that we didn't just try to cut. I think we could have chosen a different strategy and maybe gotten a few more points. But I think the confidence of like, wow, we're like halfway into this race and we're still with the top teams is just, I mean, it's so awesome.
Yeah,
So
I mean, look,
disappointing.
this is Royal Oaks did some skipping and they came up a different route than everybody else. But look, this is Rev 3 Pro. This is Rootstock women and you guys. Like this is
Yeah.
the top. At this point, we thought this was the top four teams going head to head and just blasting each other. And I also thought, like, I know how buoying it is to see a team that you're competing with, this far into the race and know, okay, here's what we got to do. But I think this is where you guys made your a little
Mhm.
Oh, the
different,
swamp.
the,
Yep.
the swamp point, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I don't know if you want to talk about it,
Yes,
but
we do.
Oh, this is Andrea's time to shine.
Andrea wants to talk about it. So you guys hit the point for I think this is 24, right? And you come to 25. This is you right here, and then you wander around for a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
So do I get to say what happened?
Go,
Yes.
yes, yes.
So, sometimes the person who's not like directly on the maps has a little bit different perspective on things. Um, so it was a little bit hard to find an attack point for this. Like the trail, we were looking for the trail to be on a certain bearing for a long enough time. And, so we were looking for a great attack point. We didn't find a great one, but we went in anyway. And we get in this swampy, marshy bog, and it's cold and wet. And every step, you're either in to your ankle, maybe your knee, sometimes more if you don't know what you're doing, or you can't see where you're stepping really. So we're like looking around, and like that Chip and David are looking at the map and trying to figure out what to do. And we see a CP a little ways away. And then we're like, is that a CP or not? And then we see someone go punch that CP. And we're like, wow, there's a CP. I'm like, oh, well, let's go. Let's go get it. And they're like, wait a minute, that's not our CP. That must be 26. And Chip's like, yeah, that's a couple 100 meters away. And I'm like, well, it's right there. We might as well at least go see for sure if it's 25 or 26, because we had to do this section in order. So if it was 26, we would still have to go find 25 and go back to 26 and move on, which is no real big deal, big whoop, but it's right there. But it was a bog. It was hard to walk through, and like, no, it's too far away. And I didn't think it was that far away, but I feel partially responsible for not forcing the issue because I'm the one that kind of had a little bit different perspective and not so micro focused. Like I should have just said to myself, I should have just forced the issue and said, well, I'm going to go check. We could see that far. We should have just gone to go check it.
Yep.
And if we could see it, we should have known it wasn't 26. Like we couldn't have been that far off. Our nav hadn't been, so terrible. We've been nabbing really good the whole time. So we couldn't have been that far off. Anyway, we all in hindsight wish we had checked it. But I feel a little more personally responsible for not forcing the issue because I just felt in my gut that that was the right point. And we should have at least checked. But it was 2 against 3, and I'm not looking at the maps. And it wasn't a big argument or anything. I think because we were also a little bit tired. So like it wasn't a big issue. It's just like we're getting a little flustered because our first attack wasn't working. And then they thought it was the other point. So anyway, we go back out, we re-attack completely from the other road on the other side.
Road there.
So we had to go back north. We crossed over the creek where it had gone more like a little waterway, and it doesn't look steep, but that's a bit of topo to climb back up to that main road. And then we attacked it from that curve, from that bend in the road, which was a little bit more obvious. And then we found ourselves right back to that point that we had already seen that we could have punched an hour before that, except that we didn't go check to see if that's what it really was.
Yeah, this
Well,
road
and
291 is overgrown. And that, when we were coming down, I'm sorry, let me back up. When we were coming down from 24, you can see kind of the train there is wonky. And like in one section, we were like going uphill, and it was like, wait, we're supposed to be going down here. Why are we going uphill? So I think it pushed us a little bit far to the northwest. So as we're coming down this road, we were looking for this curve, but it's so nuancy. There was just no way to tell, is this really the curve or not? So we kind of just lost track where we were and got in there, started mucking around. But eventually we just said, we're going to this road. We oriented the map on this road, which had cars on it. And then we popped that point And then it was like, okay, do we go straight for this through the bog? No. We're going to take the road around, and came down and over and back up and hit 26. But 25 put us back in probably 30 or 45 minutes, right? I mean, it was quite a while. We were
Yeah,
literally
it
monkeying
definitely
around.
sets you back. And I'll tell you, like we've all been at races where they have like different race courses. So sometimes you don't, you're like, I know that can't be my point. I'm not going to even go check it. But in a race like this where there's no other checkpoints out there, like, but you're not thinking to yourself, let's go check it. Like, if we're wrong, it's okay. We now know exactly where we are and then can attack 25. But you're pushing hard, you're tired, you're wet, and you're standing ankle knee deep in a bog. Um,
I
that
think though the worst consequence is that it just took a little bit away from our mojo. Like our mojo went downhill from there for a little while.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's fair, right? I mean, you're pushing hard and you hadn't really had any major bobbles, until that point. And it just tells everybody like how hard it is to stay on for 30 hours, right? Like you have to be on and you have to be able to flow with when you do good things and when you do bad things and recover from them. Because yeah, I mean, you guys definitely lost some time to other teams at that point, but it wasn't horrible. I mean, I think at this point, um, you weren't super far behind Rootstock women, and I still felt like you were in a solid like third or fourth place, like moving forward because I Rev 3 Pro was pushing well, and Wadali, then they really started separating themselves from pretty much everybody during kind of the next probably hour of this race. They really just they have a different engine, I think, than everyone else.
And also, the terrain had been really wonky, and I had stepped into holes and the rocks and stuff, and I had like tweaked my knee, still hurts now. And so I started, yeah, so like my ankle and my knee was a little bit tweaked. So I started like, oh, I got to get the poles out. It's kind of hurting. So I did slow us down a little bit there as well. So we started going a little bit slower, and I get some ibuprofen on board to keep going. Um, but also, we kind of, after that mistake, was like, okay, we got to kind of cut some stuff if we're gonna make it in time. Um,
Yeah, that is where we started to say we got to cut. We'd fallen behind our schedule.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
what
I
what
think it's
what were you thinking
interesting.
about cutting?
Oops,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I think it was interesting that it was several things coming together. You know, we took a lot of time on that one point. David's knees hurting a little bit. We're getting tired, and we realize what time it is and how many points we've got, and we're behind our minutes per checkpoint, and we just know, like it just all came together at once. Like, oh, okay, this now we feel like this is where we've been before.
Yeah, trying
And
to make
we didn't
decisions.
have a pulse on who was around us anymore because we stopped seeing some of of those teams ahead of us. So yeah, that was a come to Jesus moment. Like, what are we gonna do? And we we gave up on, we decided we needed to start cutting, but there were going to be some points kind of close to get. And on 28 is when we kind of gave a half-ass effort at finding that one and the trails didn't line up. And then once we attacked it once, we're like, we just can't waste our time on it. Let's move on, get ourselves caught up.
So is that was that the first point that you dropped was 28?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Okay. So then you continue on, and did you get the little bike window on the start of the that bike? Did you guys go in that window?
We had no problem with that. That was quick and easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I figured, right, like you guys feel comfortable on the bike, it wouldn't been much longer, and there wasn't a lot of distance in between those checkpoints. So, um,
It was a long, muddy uphill, but it was worth it.
and is that where the walking tacos were?
No, walking tacos were on where TA 4,
I think that was
So that's
where,
four. Yeah.
after that.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So you get to that next section, which would have been the start of the paddle.
Right.
And first of all, tell everybody what walking tacos are because it was a huge hit for during the race to have hot food. What tell us tell us what that was.
Dave.
Okay. Basically, it's a bag of Doritos or whatever chips, and they put like some meat and cheese and sour cream and salsa in it. Eat it up, so delicious. The only thing that I regret is that we were in such a rush at that point that we couldn't stay and eat more. It was like, okay, everyone gets one, and boom, we got to get out of here. Like we cannot stay in this transition. We gotta keep moving.
Yeah, I would have enjoyed them a lot more if we could eat them a little slower.
Yeah.
They're awesome though.
We did have a sense of urgency through that TA. I can't remember, one of the volunteers told me that, man, you guys are crushing it. You guys need to go. And yeah, so it was
Yeah.
like, let's get out of here. So we just filled up water and ate one bag and got on the road.
Well, and so at this point, had you already made the decision about skipping the next window?
Yes, pretty much.
And what was
Yeah.
the thought process of this? Because I had my thought of why this decision was made, but I want to hear it from you guys.
I mean, I guess Dave and I both were looking at the maps and thinking that's a huge climb up to the resort. And the biking, I think we're not going at 10K per hour. We're moving slower than we were expecting. And so it was a matter of if we dilly-dallied around there at the bottom, we got this big unknown up at the top of the hill. So it was like, let's just take our chances and cut everything at the bottom and move to the top of the hill. I think also the thing that played into it, and Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong, the race director said you had to be out there by 11,
Right.
or you have to start cutting points. So even 10 o'clock is only an hour, and we do it. You can't clear it and leave at 10, and we were in there right at about 10 o'clock. So we knew that
I think like 10, almost 10:30, 10:20 something.
10:30. So we knew it was like we're probably not going to be able to clear the top of the hill, let alone go in there and mess around with that. So it was really funny. We come in there and I said, team this ability, punching in, punching out. And Jeremy, after I clicked the thing or whatever, and Jeremy said, Michelle thinks that's a good decision. Like after I already made the decision, Michelle would agree with your assessment. But then there's a bottle of Jack Daniels, and I was like, "Oh, I need to take a shot of Jack Daniels." And the team's like, "Come on, Chip." I'm like, "No, I need a shot of Jack Daniels. It's not going to drink itself." But either way, we got in and out of that TA really, really quick. I mean, we were probably there for 5 minutes, maybe max. We
Well,
had
yeah, so I
water.
noticed that in this section, like of the top teams, obviously Woodali cleared it, but Rev 3 decided, and let me pull up my screen here because I want to show you guys what they did. So, in this section here, they decided to get these bottom 2 points and then come right back out.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
they didn't go after the window at all. Um, and then Rootstock ladies team, they did exactly what you guys did, which was punch in, punch out. They were right ahead of you guys. I think in that section, you'll be able to see they were 209 when they come in, but like there's 119. So here comes Rev 3. They just come and get these 2 points. So Royal Elks do as well. And then, or sorry, Rootstock does. And then they just head right back out. And, at this point, Wadali is heading towards the finish. They're already moving, up the hill. But I think it was a really smart move because now you guys are moving up this hill. And like this is where Rootstock was right here ahead of you. And here's Wadali at the top of the hill, right? So and then Rev 3 was right here after getting those 2 points. So I don't know what the distance was like on your maps, but I'm watching this and I'm going, holy crap, like they're right there, like make smart decisions. How were you guys riding that or was it a lot of hike a bike?
It was, I don't know, but probably three-quarters of it we probably rode, and the other part we hiked.
Yeah.
It was
I
rough.
was definitely I was definitely feeling it at that point. So I was walking a bit. Andrea, I was so impressed. She was just pedaling. She gave me some clues of how she just looks like 2 feet in front of her and just keeps going and pretends the hill's not a hill. Uh,
I'm
yes.
telling you, that works. Like I have a few tricks that I sometimes tell people and they probably think I'm crazy, but
No, it
yeah.
helped.
Yeah, looking 2 feet in front of your tire and just acting like it's a rail to trail. Then don't look up. If you look up, it ruins it because then you realize that you're really on a steep trail. But I also tell myself stupid things like I've got helium balloons attached to the back of my backpack and it's just kind of pushing me up the hill. And sometimes I tell myself I'm on a roller coaster and, the coaster is doing the work for me. And I'm telling you, those mind games, it really works. It might not make you fast, but it'll keep you on the bike. And I don't know, I could be crazy too.
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, right? Like I think being a little bit of crazy helps you get up those difficult times. Because I mean, that's the hardest thing is right, staying on your bike and continuing up. These are clearly switchbacks that are not going to be fun. These are all topo lines that everybody's looking at there. Um, so you guys get up that hill, and what are your thoughts there?
I was just going to say, we only had 20 minutes to spare. So if we had tried to go for any of those foot points, that would have really jeopardized our finish. And as it was, we had to give up 2 bike points, which are the two that Rootstock women were able to get. And we were really contemplating trying to get those. And I was kind of forcing the issue with a time, like, because there was a point where we could turn and skip those. I was like, okay, what time should it need to be when we get there? What time do we have to get there in order to try to get the other 2 points? And we had decided, probably safety would say 45 minutes at that one turn. If we have 45 minutes left, we'll go for those 2 points. And then maybe if we had 30 minutes, and then even after that, we're like, well, that came and went. So it wasn't even a close call. It was like, oh, okay. So it was almost a little bit more relaxing that our self-imposed cutoff time came and went. And, we did decide that I'm talking too much. You guys were looking at the maps more, but had we gotten to the finish line with enough time to go get number 35 and come back, we would. And we decided, I think, that we would need
30
probably
minutes.
half an
I think
hour
we
for
wanted
that.
30 minutes. Yeah.
And we just
Well,
didn't.
Okay, so
so
for the people that are watching, over on the right side, my cursor is next to like basically checkpoint 6. We had the choice of heading south and getting 34 and 35. It's basically along the rim of this really, it's almost like a spoon, right? Like we're coming down the east side of the spoon along the ridge line. But as we were talking about it, we looked at our time. I think we had like an hour and 20 minutes, but our bike speed on average was pretty low. I think it was like 7 or 8K per hour. And we kind of mathed it out. I was like, that's like 10K. We're not going to make it. And so we agreed we're going to come up basically head west through the resort and come around to the finish. And if we got to the finish and had 30 minutes on the clock, we were going to come down here and get 35 and come back to the finish. But by the time we got to the finish, I think we had 21 minutes. And it was too much risk. We know we're having a good race. We know we're going to place better than we expected. Why in the world would we risk coming in after time? And then of course the next day, Andrew and I, we done with breakfast, we jump on the bikes and we say, okay, could we have done it? And we went down there and we hammered down and got 35 and hammered back, and we did it in 17 minutes or something like that. But that would have left us 3 minutes. I mean, how stressful would that after a 30-hour national championship race? We're placing better than we've ever placed, and we risk it down to 3 minutes. And it was too much risk. So I really like the
well,
decisions that we made.
and I said multiple times during my live broadcast that I fully expected this ability to pull a Chip Dodd and come in at 29 minutes 59 29 hours 59 minutes and 45 seconds. So I was waiting for that to happen, Chip. So you kind of let me
It,
down
it,
here.
it almost like my thought was I was like, okay, it's so close. Let's just go down. Like, let's say if we had 30 minutes on the clock, I would have said, let's just go down 10 minutes or 12 and that leaves us 12 to come back.
Yeah.
And no matter how close we are to the CP, our turnaround point's 12, like a dive or something, or a scuba dive. Like you just have to turn around at this one point. But it was so close, and it was just like and again, Dave was in the pain cage a little bit, and
Yeah.
it's like, hey guys,
Well,
we've had a
listen,
really
I'm
good
sure
race.
all of you were in the pain cage at this point, right? I mean,
Oh
you
yeah,
just
we
climbed up a
were.
massive mountain.
Yeah,
Let me share mine again with you,
sure.
because I at this point, so all the dot watching and analysis, we're looking to see like where teams are and what they're doing. And obviously, you've got Wadali up here, already up on the mountain, heading into the last window. We showed where you guys are. This was the shock of, I think, of the race for everyone, and exactly why they ended up winning the award for um, smart racing. But that's Strong Machine. And
Wow.
when you guys are at the first switchback, they're still in that window,
Hmm.
risking it all for the bonus points,
Wow.
right? And like as you watch it move, like you guys are moving up the hill. Now they're moving back. They get up here, and they come up the hill as well. Um, and they get the window, and I will see if they take the same path that you guys take coming back. At this point, Rev 3 is up here. This is Rootstock, and you guys are just coming into that window. But man, I'll tell you, Strong Machine is pushing up that hill pretty quickly.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
hammering.
they must have put themselves deep in the pain cave. Um, so now Rev 3 is heading to the finish. You guys are coming down when they're heading up to the high point. Um, and you guys make the turn there. And this is where Rootstock, the women, they came this route, right? The route you guys didn't.
Wow.
And so they got those 2 points. And that was the difference in a placing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Was going there. Now they had about probably 15 minutes on you guys, I think, getting into that section. So, if you guys would have had 35 minutes there, you would have 100% gone for that, right? Like,
Yep.
um, and that ended up being the difference in the placings there. But as you can see, you guys coming up, I mean, they're hauling the mail to try to get back for their finish. And like listen, I was doing analysis all day, was completely blindsided by Strong Machine's moves. And for those of you that weren't paying attention or didn't hear what happened, they ended up prioritizing all of the bonus sections and went for all of the bonus sections, dropping, the onesie twosies that made it a little bit further out. And it ended up, when they ended up tabulating everything, ended up finishing in third place, which was enough to also land them with the overall season point lead for USARA as well, right?
Yep.
I was so impressed by them. I think that is so cool. We did not even think about that. Didn't even cross our mind to drop the onesie twosie, the one pointers just to get all of the windows. Like we thought about we should prioritize them when it made sense, but we never thought to just get those. And I think that's so cool. We were talking with them, and I think they'd said they'd raced nationals like 9 times or something like that. And they worked really hard to get to where they are too. So it's cool to see getting, it's cool to be outsmarted because in our sport it's like part of it is the strategic cerebral part of it that we really love, and makes it a lot of fun. So good on them. That's an awesome strategy.
Well, it is, right? Like it's eye-opening because it makes you think. I mean, I say all the time the reason that I came over from triathlon to adventure racing because this is a thinking man's game. And like I love that about it because I am not the fastest, but you're gonna see that if I'm physically able to compete, I'm competing with teams that are much faster than me because I make smart choices. And that was I mean, it was a huge risk, and I can't imagine the pain, you know the suffering that they were doing coming up that hill, just thinking, all right, well, we've done it now. This is our chance. And they put themselves in that pain locker. But I, you guys and I talk all the time, and I tell you all the time that you're way too humble. Um, but you guys finished in fourth place at the United States Adventure Racing National Championship against some of the toughest competition that there is. So I think we can stop saying that we're not competitive
I would have
because
bet
this
money,
facility is
like
100% competitive.
when you interviewed us in the beginning and we were like, I think we can do top 15, but top 10 is probably that's our stretch goal because you look at the people in the room and they're just all amazing. And I would have bet you unlimited money. There's no way we're ended up top 5 overall. No way. Zero chance. And so I don't know, just things went our way. Sometimes you have a good race and other people have a bad race. And I did say that. Like we're gonna have the best race ever. If we're in the top 10, because we had a great race and a lot of really good teams had a really bad race. And that did, obviously a few teams had a really bad race.
Yeah.
But hey, it's a matter of we're durable and we're consistent. And that's one thing
So
that we very rarely have to. I mean, I can't remember the last time we had to drop out of a race. It's like it's been 5 years, 7 years or something. So
David, I want to come to you first. I want to talk about like what this means to finish fourth with this team as the newest member.
Like it's mind blowing, honestly. 3 years ago, I attempted my first 24-hour race, and it ended with me on the side of the trail, literally crying that I couldn't finish it. I had to call the director, come pick me up. He's like, just like, no, I'm not coming to pick you up. You got to make it. And finally, like one of the volunteers did come and pick me up. And I just remember thinking like, I can't even do this 24 hour. Maybe I'm just meant to do 10 or 12-hour races. I'm not meant to do these, multi-day long races. And here we are 3 years later, and I'm on an amazing team. Like these two teammates and Caitlin, they are the best teammates. Like when we're out there, we're always having a good time. We're always working well together. There's no friction. There's no fighting. Like everything is just smooth. Like we've been racing forever. And now I'm on this amazing team, and it helps me finish fourth at the national champions. Only 3 years after I couldn't even finish a 24-hour race. I mean, it's mind blowing to me, honestly.
Andrea, I'm going to come to you second because I want to save the crying for last with Chip.
Well, I cry too, but lately
I
she
know.
more than me.
I mean,
No,
I want to know what this means to you.
it's, I just feel like I've arrived. It's taken me a long time. David's the only reason we're not a masters team. I'm the oldest on our team. I'm 52. I started mountain biking when I was 40. I started running. I did my first 5K when I was 37. So I've said these things before, but for me, like I just can't believe it. It's like so freaking cool. And I just don't want to take it for granted. We're working hard all the time and having great teammates and great awesome opportunities. And I just hope I don't want that to be taken away from me. Just the opportunity to be able to do it no matter what placement we have. So, I'm thrilled. It's like you can't believe. I'm so thrilled that we got fourth place. But yeah, I mean, I've felt a lot of satisfaction over the last, 5 years, however many years. We've been racing since 2016, and I feel like once we started upping our game to longer and longer expedition races, I just feel like the trajectory of my life and my racing has just been going the direction like that I've purposely chosen to make it go because I wanted to, and it's working, and I love it, and it's just really fulfilling. So it just feels really great. All right, next.
Chip, so I want you to touch on like what these teammates mean to you and like how this has changed as far as this ability is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, like what Andrea said, it's we could never have dreamed to be here. I mean, you gotta think like the team name is this ability, right? It's like we can't do a lot of things, but we can do this. I can't be a skateboarder anymore. I can't be a wakeboarder. So here we are. We found the sport. It's a smart man sport or whatever you said. It's like an intellectual sport. So
Thinking man's game.
it's a thinking man's game. So it's like, okay, cool. I can be old and not be super fast, but we can try to be super smart and constantly learn and grow. Um, and so to find people that are willing to even do this, to spend 30 hours in a hurricane looking for stupid little flags in the woods and they actually enjoy it. I mean, these are this when you looked at the room at USARA, like these are just like the best people in the world. And it doesn't matter where they're from or what they do, the fact that they signed up to do this 30 hours of suffering in this miserable, weather in this beautiful environment that Michelle apparently says it was beautiful when they're setting the points. Not only our team, I'm just impressed with all the teams, regardless of their backpack, mid pack, front pack. These are just amazing people. I want to be around them nonstop. And but specifically this team, it's like as you guys that have been following us, we're really, I think all of us really stepped up. I mean, Andrea and I started putting rocks in the backpack. I think we were listening to actually Jesse Tubb on his podcast, and he said, "Yeah, I got one rock friends and two rock friends." So if he's going with the slow people, he puts like 2 bags of rocks in his back. I was like, I need to put rocks in my backpack. That's how I can be like Jesse. And so Andrea and I are biking with rocks in our backpack, and I'm putting ankle weights on my mountain bike. I got 13 pounds of lead on my bike just so it's heavy because we live in Virginia Beach. So it does feel good, and I'm sure Dave's the same thing. Like you go from like I don't know what I'm doing, and then I'm going to be disciplined. I'm gonna sacrifice. I'm gonna suffer, but I'm gonna bust my ass to achieve something really big. And he's like 35 or something, but at our age, that's like a big deal. So I don't know. I'm just super proud of the team. Again, like what Dave said, we're just out there having the time of our lives. There's no friction. I'm falling asleep and they help me out, and it's like everybody just works together. And especially, we just got done with Alaska and we're getting ready to go to Ecuador for like 8 days, and then after that, I know Dave can't do that, but we're going to New Zealand and we're gonna do that for like 8 days, and then these are people you trust. You trust them with your life. I mean, it's serious. This is not running a marathon. This is like you're going to a foreign country and you're doing dangerous stuff for long periods of time, and you got to treat it seriously. And so I don't know. It's weird being here kind of near the top because normally we were way, way, way in the back, and you're like, how do those people do it? It ain't easy, and it takes a lot of time and effort and discipline, and it does pay off. So that's the thing. It's good diet, good exercise, and training a lot. And I'm just really proud of these guys, and I would love to race anywhere in the world with them.
Well, listen, I've been lucky enough to have been a part of your podcast for a long time now, it feels like. And I have seen you guys come a long way, and I really feel like this team dynamic is very different. You've had some great and strong teammates before. But I feel like this core that you have established with David and Caitlin is something that's going to carry you guys really far. I'm excited to see what you guys do at Worlds, and I'll be bringing all of the dot watching from home. And I'm going to be expecting this same kind of result as will all of your fans. So I think you need to start stop going from feeling, oh, well, we're just going to do what we can, to like, we're pushing to do this. And, because I think you have proven that you can and you will do those things if you set your mind to it. You guys are all super strong. Like I said earlier, I was always secretly cheering for you guys, even when I had to be my journalist, non-favorable self. And maybe me throwing in the Chip Dodd references probably gave it away in my thing. But I really do think that you guys have a lot to be proud of. And it was a great result. And I know that everybody out there that is watching this ability is not surprised. I think you might have surprised yourself, but you didn't surprise any of us. So well done, guys. It was a well-deserved podium finish, and can't wait to see what you guys do at Worlds.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah. Very
Thank
exciting.
you, Doug. I can't wait to see all of the rest of the footage and media stuff you provided during the race. I haven't gotten to see it all yet, but you've added a lot to the sport and a level of charisma that I think was needed. So I love it. So thank
Well,
you for interviewing us and being part of our journey.
I,
So
I I love doing this. Like I put as much passion into this as you guys put into being out there, and I hope that that shows because I really do love doing it. I was fangirling the entire weekend over all the teams because I'm like, oh wow, look at there's that team and there's that team, and I've never met them, but I want to go meet them. Like I had never met Chelsea before, and I was like, hi, I'm
Rock
Doug.
star. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like I love this. It was my absolute pleasure to cover it. I had a blast. I lost my voice for a day, which I know some people are probably happy about, my wife included. Uh,
and do you have a race coming up?
so my next race is C to C.
Yeah,
And we're gonna have a really fun team. We're racing under team AR DotWatch. We're gonna have a four-person team with Megan Natano,
great.
that was on Steel Wolves, Johnny Hand, and my buddy Charles. And we're gonna have a fantastic time and hopefully provide really great race coverage from inside the race.
Good.
So I listen, I can't help but be inspired by everybody. So like I got home yesterday or got back here to where I am yesterday and hiked 3 miles with a pack on. And then this morning I got up and rode my bike. So like it's time to get ready for C to C. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
And your partnership with Jeff is going to be really good, Jeff O'Connor. I mean, that's going to be really cool to have the technology side, the overlays that he was doing for the last few races, and then, I mean, it really looks like a new show with the scrolling and all of that. I mean, I know you guys are just getting started, but I can't wait to see where you take that in the future. It's going to be really
I
cool.
mean, I really think that we've just hit the tip of the iceberg. I mean, Jeff is absolutely amazing behind the scenes, and that show would have been nothing with just but me rambling if it wasn't for him. And so, like the things that he did, and then obviously having Brian Gatens and Mary Foster being out on course, giving live updates, and like the videos from Mike Garrison and Randy, and like it was just like an and that made it so amazing, and I can't wait to see where this goes and what we're able to accomplish. We're trying to bring AR to the mainstream, so we'll see if we can do it. And ESPN 8, the Ocho, if you're listening, we're ready.
Awesome.
I want to see you
Well,
in Ecuador.
one last thing that I just wanted to express is that, David expressed some gratitude for being able to be on our team. And I just wanted to say thanks for racing with us. Like it is a team. It's not just Chip and I with whoever. It's like I really appreciate being able to race with both of you. You guys led me around and we didn't get lost that much. And I gave you some shit here and there, but yeah, you were great navigators and that was really fun. So thank you. So, okay. Didn't want to forget to say that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
All right,
next up
got it.
for listen, next up for everybody, follow Team Disability at the World Championships in November. They are primed. They are coming off a podium finish at the USARA National Championship and looking to take on the world now. So it's Team Disability versus the world.
That's
Awesome.
cool.
All right, bye everybody. Thanks for
Cool. Thanks,
listening.
Doug. See you guys.
See you guys.
Later. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment.
If you have a question for the next mailbag segment, call 757-354-4795 and leave us a voicemail or a text with your name, city you are calling from, and your question.
To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for Disability Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.